What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to What If Deku Was Levi Ackerman? If there's one thing that this channel has seen a lot, it's comments like, what if Deku was a Titan shifter? And I got so tired of seeing them that I finally decided, okay, you guys want AOT and MHA? I'll give you guys something, which is why today I'm dropping today's video. However, that's not the only reason. This video is technically sponsored by another What If YouTuber who actually makes dope videos and actually ended up commissioning this video to be made. That is Yonanez. The mad lad actually makes his own YouTube videos and he said he wanted to plug it, so I am. And also, he's the real reason why y'all are getting this video. So definitely go to the link down below in the comments to see who I'm talking about, and I'm telling y'all won't regret it because his what ifs are actually kind of fire. I've seen a couple of them and they're valid. They're valid. He got the Xehther plaque of validation on him. So yeah, definitely go check them out. But with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you guys enjoyed today's video, then leave a like on it so I know that you guys want an extra part and so this video can do a lot better in the algorithm, considering these videos haven't been doing too well recently. But yeah, with all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
We start our story off in the perspective of Inko Midoriya. Now, in the original My Hero Academia story, when Inko was watching Izuku pretend to be All Might and use a quirk in a sense, she smiled and got worried, thinking to herself that he might not have a quirk. But this time, she looked at him in disgust, but then looked away and faked a smile, looking at Izuku before saying, "Hey, come on now, let's go to the quirk doctor." She'd be worried, thinking to herself that she hopes her son isn't quirkless and that she can only pray that he isn't, you know? So they make their way there and Izuku's having not exactly the best car ride, right? It's quiet, Inko's silent, she's not saying nothing to Izuku. They make their way inside the office, and once they're inside, they look towards the direction of the doctor, who would say, "Ah, the Midoriyas." He then welcomes them into his office and would say, "How can I be of your service today?" Inko looks at him and asks, "What were the results?" And the doctor looks at her and says, "Well, I'm going to need you to sit down for this," before going over the charts and saying that Izuku has an extra pinky joint, something that many others have already gotten rid of, and that's why he's not going to be developing a quirk. Inko would look at Izuku with disgust in her eyes, a look that Izuku had never seen before in his mother, and from here, she would take him home, not saying a thing to Izuku before she would go on a call with Hisashi Midoriya and say that the brat is of no use, that he didn't develop no quirk, and that he's useless. They're gonna have to start all over. Izuku hears that conversation between his father and his mother, and tears would begin coming out of his face before he then looks at the direction of his mother, who would catch him spying, and she would rush at him before she starts beating at him, giving him a full-on purple eye, and Izuku would cry, but nothing would happen because Inko would just keep beating and beating and beating, saying that he's useless. If he doesn't have a quirk, he can't become a pro hero, and if he doesn't become a pro hero, then they're gonna be broke forever. They're never gonna make it out, and Iyashi's gonna have to continue working his no good job just to make ends meet. Inko then looks at Izuku and says that she wishes he was never born, and Izuku would cry. This time not because he felt pain, but because he felt emotional pain. It was something that Izuku had never thought his mother would say. Up to this point, her nice facade had gotten the best of him, and he thought that his mother could never say something like that to him. But he was wrong. And he just had to watch as his mother just betrayed him. A week later, they'd be out at the grocery store. A grocery store that for some reason was about 2 hours away from where he usually lives at. And Izuku would wonder to himself why that would be the case, but not really say anything, just following his mother until eventually she would tell Izuku to wait there, and Inko would disappear. She just doesn't pop up. Izuku would then go towards the direction of one of the people around and be like, hey, can you help me find my mom? And they're like, oh, I would, sweetie, but I'm in a rush. And, heroes can do that. They tell him that a hero can come by and help him out just to look for a hero, right? So Izuku does so. He goes out to the street and he tries to find a hero, but no heroes. Nobody helps him. Fast forward to a week later, Izuku hasn't ate anything rather than things that people would leave around in coffee shops or like McDonald's or something like that, like bags of leftovers. That's what Izuku's been surviving on. Obviously being able to go to random shops and asking for a cup of water, but other than that, Izuku was honestly kind of malnourished. Izuku would look at the direction of another older guy and he would ask him what his name is. The man would tell him that his name is unimportant, but he would tell him if he has anywhere to go. And Izuku would say that he doesn't. He's homeless effectively. The man looks at him with disgust and then says, well, then get out of here, kid. I don't want people to be giving you the money when they could be giving it to me. I was going to ask you for some, but it looks like you have nothing for me. Before kicking Izuku away, and Izuku would land on the ground with a hard thump before thinking to himself, why his mom and dad did this to him? Why did they abandon me? He thinks. Eventually, time passes, and Izuku would eventually become 4 and 3/4. He's basically on like his 9th birth, like 9 months. So basically, he had like 3 months left until he turned 5. And Izuku was struggling, to put it lightly, right? But it's at this point that Izuku, in a moment of desperation, Izuku just feeling like the whole world was going to collapse. He would be sitting in an alleyway, cold and, hungry. He looks extremely malnourished at this point. He then looks at the direction of a man who would be walking by. This man would be bald. He's wearing these glasses because he can't really see too well. And he just kind of looks like a character from Baki. Somebody that you guys probably don't know of, but just a character from Baki, right? But he looks over towards Izuku and asks him what he's doing there. And Izuku would say that he's waiting to die. The man then looks at him and says that a kid as young as him shouldn't say something like that, to come with him, giving him some food and water. Izuku eating on it almost as if he had never ate before, and then he would look at the man before saying that, what does he want with a kid who is quirkless? Saijima, overhearing the fact that Izuku's quirkless, would say, so you're one of those special people. You know what, kid, to tell you the truth, I was born with quirk myself, but a very weak one. I had to learn to fend for myself, and it was hard, but I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be quirkless. Izuku says, not so good. My parents left me because of that. And Saijima looks towards the direction of Izuku before then telling him that, well, his parents aren't here anymore, so he's stuck with him now, laughing silently as he would go towards the direction of Izuku, taking him towards his house, and tell Izuku that for now, he's going to be the one taking care of him, okay? Izuku, looking at Saijima, would say, sure. And from here, Saijima looks towards the direction of Izuku before telling him that he's going to be being with him now, giving him a nice shower and telling him that for the next month, he's just going to let him eat and enjoy himself, followed by a little bit of exercise to get his nutritional value all the way back up. And once he's healthy again, he's going to help him get into tip-top shape so that kids don't mess with him, telling him that he's personally going to be taking care of Izuku from now on, and that his name will have to change, seeing as he can't just adopt the kid that's just on the street. Since technically he does have parents, and clearly his parents don't want him, he's going to just have to go by another name. And Izuku would be like, what name? And the guy would say, your name's Levi now. With Izuku wondering to himself, okay. With Izuku wondering to himself why, but he would just go along with it, being like, okay then. And from here, a month would pass, as Izuku for the next 2 months would spend his time training with Saijima, and eventually once he was a bit trained up, he would tell Izuku that he's going to be needing to go to school, and at this said school, he's just going to lie and tell people that he has a slight augment quirk. But, obviously he doesn't, and he's just going to have to lie to them for a bit. He would then ask Izuku what his dream is when he grows older, and Izuku would say he wants to be a hero. Saijima saying, typical, that's what every single kid out nowadays wants. Looks like people don't care about electricians or policemen anymore. There's no need for firemen anymore, considering heroes take care of that. And there's also no need for many other jobs because nobody wants to do them. Looks like the world only cares about heroics now. Before looking at Izuku and saying, but kid, I think you can do it. Quirkless or not, with a little bit of training, I think anybody could become a pro hero. Saying that many of them are actually a lot weaker than you would think they'd be. And Izuku would say, no, I gave up. It's not like a quirkless loser like me could possibly become a hero. And Saijima would say, why not? I mean, this world might have been kicking you down when you were down, but that doesn't mean that you can't kick back. You can't get back up and fight. That doesn't mean that you don't get the chance to try to fend for yourself, to try to swing back at the world for once. This world is going to knock you down, but that's why you got to stand up and tell it that you're not done. You're not done no matter how many times it kicks you down. You were at death's door, kid, and you survived. You literally flirted with death for a bit. And Izuku would be confused at that sentence, but he would just go along with it. As following this, Saijima would enroll Izuku into a different school, in which he would meet a strange looking girl. Now this girl would go by the name of Mei Hatsume, and she would be a freak when it comes to trying to create little gadgets, or so as she would call them, babies. Izuku at this age of 5 years old would finally have made a somewhat acquaintance, because it's not his friend, but he just knows of her existence. But at this school, Izuku would get picked on relentlessly. Kids would always make fun of him, saying that he has the weakest quirk ever, and Izuku would actually get picked on. Eventually, it would come out to the light that Izuku doesn't have a quirk when the teacher would end up reading off Izuku's records, saying that his record was shown not to have a quirk. And so everybody would find out, considering that Izuku has new records. Not the one of Izuku, but the record of a kid named Levi. Some kid that tragically passed away and just so happened to also be quirkless. Now, who's this kid, you guys might be asking? Well, this kid is actually the deceased son of Saijima. His kid actually ended up dying like that same day. And when Saijima saw Izuku was there, he just thought to himself that maybe this is a sign. And it was. The kid was quirkless as well, and he didn't die. His son had accidentally died by drowning, and Saijima couldn't find him. So he was pretty, down that day. Didn't exactly tell Izuku that, but now Izuku has to live like this. His official name being Levi Ackerman. And now Izuku's just in class, just relaxing, binging, when suddenly some kid comes up to him and begins to start bullying him. Izuku, thinking to himself that using his combats and martial arts that he would have learned from Saijima, he can maybe stand up to this kid. But the kid would have a very, very powerful quirk, and he would use it to beat down on Izuku, not giving him even a chance in the world to stand up for himself. Izuku getting beat down and going home with scratches and bruises. When Saijima sees this, he would laugh and tell Izuku that he got beat up, didn't he? And Saijima would smile before telling him, looks like that just means you gotta train harder. And so, for the following years, Izuku would be ostracized for being quirkless. This would lead Izuku to growing a lot colder towards the world, thinking that the world only cares about one thing, and that's power, strength. So Izuku vowed to himself that he would get it no matter what. No matter what, Izuku would think, growing stronger day by day, trying to impress Saijima, and he would do so. Saijima would be an incredible father figure for Izuku, and eventually, once Izuku would get towards the age of 14, Izuku would finally have gotten so powerful, in fact, that even many of the kids with quirks would actually have found the necessity to respect Izuku, because of the fact that if you don't respect Izuku, he would beat on you down and make sure you knew that a quirkless loser was beating you. And so that's how Izuku managed to survive all throughout middle school. But that girl, Mei Hatsume, she always did seem to catch his eye. One day, however, Izuku would be out and about at a store when he would end up going towards a shop that sold little gadgets. Izuku being there would be very, very interested, walking inside and seeing a girl with pink hair. Noticing her, he would ask her, what she's doing here. And she would say, oh, she's just looking for some tools to make her babies. And Izuku would say, interesting. You think theoretically something like that could help out a quirkless guy like me? And Hatsume would say, depends, maybe. From here, she looks towards Izuku and would ask what exactly he would want. And Izuku would say something that could help me keep up with quirk people. Mei Hatsume would say, oh, I could definitely make you something. Before then going on to invite Izuku over to her house, just instantly. She's like, come over. And she grabs him by the hand and begins rushing home. Going into her house, she's like, Mom, Dad, I have a friend over. And they're both in the living room. They're just like, okay. Izuku then gets taken towards the garage. And in there, Hatsume would begin telling Izuku about all the different kinds of babies that she has, before giving some to Izuku and then making an explosion go off in her garage. Izuku from here goes on to look at the direction of her and be like, look, I don't think this is exactly going to, before then looking onto one thing and seeing that it shot out like a rope. It was like a propeller, similar to what Mei Hatsume used. No, it's literally what Mei Hatsume used in the sports festival, where she used like the shoes and they shot out like rods that were able to like make her fly around and zip. That's exactly what it was. Izuku, grabbing onto that, would think to himself, I could use that. It would help me out with my mobility. Maybe I can even combine it with this, taking a pocket knife out of his pocket and holding it to Hatsume for asking her if he could put him on. He would do so, putting the knife away, and he would fall flat on his face instantly. Not knowing how to use it, Mei Hatsume laughs and says, yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to. Izuku would ask her why she doesn't position it towards the middle of the body instead of at his feet, saying that it would be a lot more useful if it was like near his waist. Mei Hatsume, thinking about this, would tell him to come back tomorrow, and she might have something ready for him. And so, the prototype version of ODM gear would finally be created, with Izuku looking onto it and thinking to himself that this could be it. With this, he could potentially become a pro hero, the hero that Izuku never thought he was going to be. Izuku has a smile on his face, and his hair is dyed black now, by the way, so no more green hair, and he would look at Mei Hatsume before thanking her profusely and walking out the door. He'd be like, thanks so much. That's profusely, because keep in mind, Izuku does have that Levi personality, so he's not exactly going to get down on his knees and be like, thank you so much, like Izuku would, and start crying, right? But he would thank her, and so he would make his way home after having the first version of the ODM gear created by Mei Hatsume. When he enters the house, he would realize that Saijima would have committed seppuku. Saijima would be laying down in the ground in a pool of blood, as Izuku would wonder what happened. But Saijima's pulse was gone, and by the time the authorities arrived, there was nothing they could do. Saijima was pronounced dead. And just to tell you guys, Saijima didn't die for no reason. He didn't commit seppuku. Somebody killed him. But nobody's gonna know that. Nobody except Izuku. The authorities would have said that Saijima did that, but Izuku would refuse to believe it, saying that Saijima's a man of honor. He would have never killed himself. It had to have been faked. Somebody had to have faked Saijima of his own murder. There's no way Saijima would do something like that. He's not a coward. But the authorities don't listen, and they just end up going off to do their own things, telling him that he's crazy and that they don't got to listen to a quirkless kid, one of the officers would say, before chuckling in his face and saying to calm down, it's just a joke. But Izuku would sit there in the house by himself and would be told by the authorities that he can just live on his own, seeing as you could do that in Japan, but he better need to find some way to cough up the money. So, for the next couple of months, Izuku would have to go to school and have a full-time job that he would go to as soon as he gets out of school, working like the night and as soon as he gets home from work. He has to work, he has to train, he has to go to school, and he has to text Mei Hatsume every now and then about updates on the new versions of ODM gear that she would work on. During this time, Izuku would continue just doing this over and over and over and over and over, and eventually it would get to the point where there's only 10 months left before the UA entrance exam. Izuku this time doesn't actually end up meeting All Might due to the sludge villain accident, right? Or actually, you know what? I'm going to be switching things. Yes, he does, because the sludge villain this time is going to be in the city that he lives in, and he's going to be in that city because why not, you know? And also All Might's going to be there also because why not? So jumping over towards what's going to happen, the sludge villain would end up grabbing a hold of some kid, right? And Izuku seeing this, remembering what it was like to be on the cusp of death's door, seeing the look in the eyes of the kid who was getting literally suffocated, and All Might having already ran out of time because he already helped out so many other people with villain attacks, considering the place where Izuku lives is riddled with them. Izuku goes towards that direction, rushing forward using his ODM gear before clipping it towards the walls and blitzing at the direction of the sludge villain. With his knife, he stabs into the eye of the sludge villain, and the sludge villain himself would yell out a gut-wrenching screech, which would cause anybody who hears it to completely be shocked by it. But Izuku, once he tags the sludge villain would let go of the kid for just enough for Izuku to grab onto the kid's arm, yank him out of there, and zip out of that whole entire situation. All Might watching this would be impressed, and finally, more and more authorities end up arriving. The sludge villain then going after trying to get other people, but All Might would finally buff up and hit the sludge villain away before everything could have been turned back to normal. Once he sees that kid and he realizes that that kid acted not knowing who he is, he followed him. and Izuku would be met face to face with the #1 hero of Japan, All Might. All Might looks to Izuku and would say, ha ha ha, before then losing his complete muscle form and looking at the direction of Izuku, who would ask him what he thinks he's doing in front of him. And All Might would say that he saw how he acted, and he would ask him for his name. Izuku says the name's Levi Ackerman, before All Might would say, oh, that's interesting. And Izuku would say, yeah, all right, well, nice to meet you, #1, as he would begin walking off, and All Might would be shocked. He never met somebody who wasn't completely thrilled by his presence, but this kid, he didn't care at all. This kid did not care at all, like literally. And All Might was shocked by that because, like I said, he's not used to that. But then Izuku would be stopped by All Might, who would ask him, what quirk do you have, kid? And Izuku would look at him before saying, I don't have a quirk. I'm quirkless. Now that you know that, I'm guessing you're probably going to make fun of me or say that it was too dangerous for me to get involved, right, All Might? Before All Might looks at Izuku and would say, no, actually, that just makes it all the more impressive. Kid, I would have never imagined somebody quirkless to have been the one to act. I mean, I'm the #1 hero and I was watching helplessly. If anybody should be a hero, it's you, kid. I think you could become a hero. I think you have what it takes to become a great hero someday. And Izuku would say thanks. Was already planning on attending UA anyways. Before All Might would ask, how would he feel about having a quirk if he hypothetically could get one? And Izuku would say, well, obviously I'd take it in a heartbeat. More power means I'd have more odds of saving more people. I mean, the whole goal is to save people. I don't want to become a hero because I want to have fame or money. I want to become a hero because I want people to know that they'll be safe. I want to become a hero because I want other villains to know that they have to fear me. But without a quirk, I don't think I'll be too good at that. But I'll definitely save lives, for sure. And I'll make the whole world know of who I am. The first quirkless hero. The first person to do what everybody said he couldn't. All Might, looking at the direction of Levi, he would say, well, kid, you're in luck. Because I just so happen to have a quirk that can be passed on from generation to generation. And you, young Levi, you are my successor. Izuku's eyes widen and he would be like, no way. Before All Might turns to Izuku and would say, there is a way, young man. Your heroic heart has cried out to me and I've heard it. And now we're going to train together and I'm going to give you my quirk. One for all. From here, we have a brief time skip to about 2 months later, after Izuku has been working out with All Might, and All Might has made sure that Izuku is 100% the candidate that he needs. He would finally give the quirk of One for All to Izuku, and Izuku would have made it clear, very, very clear to All Might that he can't exactly be with him all the time, seeing as he does have a nighttime job. Like Izuku's not going to lie to All Might. So All Might ends up hooking up Izuku and letting him live at his house. Izuku having to leave Saijima's residence and ending up putting it for sale, which it would be bought for about a lot of money, whatever houses go for in Japan, a lot of yen, right? But ultimately what that means is that Izuku has a lot more money in his bank account now, and he's able to use that for whenever he wants, obviously. But for now, living with All Might and training with All Might would be a lot of fun, and he would finally have the chance to quit his jobs, going on to do nothing but training, and then more training. Izuku, after doing all of this with All Might, would finally end up getting to a point by the 10-month period where he has more of a capable control with One for All than even season overhaul, like season 5 Deku, basically. Like Izuku, because of his keen understanding on his body and knowing not to just channel things in one place, would have almost immediately had access to full cowling. Not to mention, Izuku's not a goofball. He definitely is going to be trying different things. A variation of sorts, right? And so Izuku definitely got very, very powerful, very, very strong, and he would have actually ended up incorporating the ODM gear into his fighting style, telling All Might about the fact that he's going to be using swords to fight, or even knives, but swords just sound cooler. All Might would be kind of weirded out by this idea, considering that he's not sure that somebody could actually use swords and not hurt people. But Izuku, he would make some little dummies out of trash using the Dagoma Beach leftovers, and he would end up just putting them and setting them up. in a location where Izuku can grapple all over the place, and using that, he would be able to easily cut the things in non-vital areas, but just being able to make it so that like villains couldn't fight back. All Might would definitely be surprised at his accuracy, but he would say that he's not sure if he'd be able to do the same thing to a real person without harming them too bad. So now he needs to do that with him, buffing up and looking at Izuku before saying that he hopes he knows what he's doing, kid. Before looking at him and saying that even if he does miss, All Might's muscles are so thick he probably won't be able to cut through him. And All Might would laugh as he would look towards Izuku and rush at him. Izuku then blitzing out of the way using One For All 30% and also using his ODM gear, which would make him even more faster. Blitzing at the direction of All Might before cutting the back of his like feet, like the tendons that are in the back of his feet, leaving All Might completely like incapable of continuing on with the fight, and then landing in front of All Might as he would swing his sword at the neck of All Might, and All Might would be scared. He thinks he's gonna die, but Izuku stops, redirects the blow, and spinning midair would land before looking at All Might and saying, "I told you I was pretty good at it." And All Might would be shocked, saying that he could not have picked a better successor. He would go on to tell him how proud he is of him, and he would tell him that he needs to rest up for now, considering that the UA entrance exam is right around the corner, and he thinks that Izuku is more than ready to finally show the world what he's truly made of. He's ready for his hero, Academia.
As anime fans, we love to show our support to our favorite shows by rocking anime apparel. But something I'm pretty sure we can all agree on is it's so expensive. So I've partnered up with Fandom to bring you all affordable, high quality anime merch that you are sure to love. And if you use my code Xehther at checkout, you can even get an extra 10% off the already affordable merch. Keep in mind, it does come from overseas sellers, so its sizing is going to be different since it's overseas. That said, let's get back into the video.